Here we go. But yeah, man, proteins and nucleic acids are going to be big on the EOC, and you're definitely going to want to be paying attention to this, especially proteins. We'll actually cover nucleic acids a little bit more, maybe in chapter like 11 or something like that. And just FYI, I'll stop later and give you guys time to write these notes from the video like we did the other day. Hopefully this video will be uploaded a little quicker today for you. But anyway, we will discuss nucleic acids later in chapter 11. So really pay attention to proteins today. All right, now with everything, we need to know their monomers. This is words from the other day, monomers, and then we need to know the polymer, right? Now, the building blocks is obviously going to be something called amino acids. Now, I want you to remember this little three-letter phrase too. That'll help you remember some things. You'll find out later that amino acids combine to form proteins, and then proteins will combine to form enzymes, right? That's what that APE means. Now, the function of a protein is it provides structure and support for tissues in our body. Now, all right, now, like I say, I'll give you time later to write this stuff. But as you can see, man, if you think about, when you think about proteins, if you remember your muscles, if you kind of remember that, it'll make this section a lot easier, especially when I talk about amino acids, proteins, and then you think about your muscles. And y'all know when y'all eat meat, this is literally the animal's muscle, by the way. That's what y'all are eating. And at the end of the day, your body will digest these things, and then in turn, it digests them down into amino acids, and then your body uses those amino acids to make your muscles, which is kind of crazy because now we're really getting into the idea that you are what you eat, right? So now I want you to think about it this way. There is part of your muscles in your body sitting here today that are actually built from amino acids that were part of a cow, a chicken, a pig. Right, your body, your muscle didn't just manifest out of thin air, did it? It didn't just magically manifest out of thin air. It came from what you ate. And then your body digested that and then converted those molecules into what you are. Now think about it this way. Y'all know in gym or in the weight training class, you go and work out. What type of shake do they have you drink after you work out? A protein shake, don't they? Why do they have you drink a protein shake? Well, what are your muscles made of? Protein. So that protein shake helps repair your muscles, and it helps them grow. There's this other stuff you can get to drink called branch chain amino acids, BCAAs, and it helps reduce the effects of muscle soreness. Have any of y'all worked out before? And then like the next day or the day after, you have that DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. Has any ever had that before? You can drink these things called BCAAs, which are branch chain amino acids, right? And what they do is they prevent you from being so sore a couple of days after. Well, those amino acids help your muscles repair because they are amino acids, and those amino acids combine to form the proteins that are your muscles, right? So keep that in mind. All right, now, proteins, you do need to know they are typically found. Where you would typically find them? Meat, beans, peanuts, and milks. Why would this be important? What type of people would need these things to get proteins in their diet? Vegetarians, right? They've got to have a source of protein for their diet. So beans, peanuts, and milk and other things like that are how vegetarians keep literally proteins in their diet. Do you remember this phrase, what I had told you? That APE, that means amino acids combined to form what? Proteins, right? So definitely want to make sure you remember amino acids are the building blocks, and then, proteins would be basically the polymer. And here's another way you can look at it. I do want you to know this too. We've talked about several chemical bonds before. We talked about covalent bonds and hydrogen bonds. I want you to know amino acids, right, are held together by a chemical bond called a peptide bond. Now, for a monomer, each one of these amino acids, right, each one of these little dots would be a monomer. But when you put that large molecule together, the polymer, right, that polymer is a what? Protein, right? Make sure you understand how these things are built. And then you see how each one of these little dots, matter of fact, I'll zoom in for you guys so you can see it really well. You see each one of these little dots. This is actually phenylalanine, glutamine, alanine, arginine, aspartate or cysteine, leucine, isoleucine, tryptophan, proline, tyrosine, serine, methionine. Do y'all have to remember all that? No, no, absolutely not. I've just seen it enough that I remember it. The point is that each one of these little spheres, such as glutamine, that's what they're actually named. Each one of those things is a what? Amino acid. But if you look at the whole molecule, a sequence of amino acids, that entire thing is a what? A protein. Now, do y'all see how this stuff is hit? Now, check this out. Now you got that blue protein. You got the light blue protein, the orange protein, the yellow protein. Now these proteins have started to combine to make something even bigger, hasn't it? Right? So you've got the amino acids coming together to make the proteins, but now proteins come together to make something a little bigger, which is what you see right here. And you should know by now, if you know this APE, that it's going to start with an E, right? The reason why, this will be on the EOC, the reason why these things fold into these 3D shapes that you see in the background, many amino acids have a charge, and sometimes they can be positive or they can be negative. What do y'all know about positive and negative ends of a magnet? What do? They attract, don't they? What about if it was two positive ends of a magnet, what would they do? They would repel. So if you got molecules that are randomly positively and negatively charged, in some places they'll be close together, and then in some places they'll be far apart. And that causes a three-dimensional shape to be built when you have a bunch of these things combined, right? So it can cause them to attract or repel each other. It causes these proteins to have a three-dimensional shape. And then you need to know that this is what creates different proteins. And these different proteins all have a specific what? Job. Does that make sense? Every protein in your body's got its own unique job. Now, those proteins, like this purple protein, this blue one, this orange one, this red one, they will then combine, right, to form these things called enzymes. Now, this is very, very important. Enzymes, you will see a lot of stuff on enzymes on the EOC. Some important phrases that you'll need to know is that they are organic catalysts. And what that means is that they speed up the rate of a chemical reaction. You've got an enzyme in your mouth right now called saliva. It's actually called salivary amylase. Does it not help speed up how fast you break down bread in your mouth? Do you think you've got enzymes in your stomach that help you digest food? If you didn't have those enzymes, do you think it would take longer or a shorter amount of time for you to digest food? It would take a lot longer, wouldn't it? So the fact that you've got those enzymes, what does it help do to that chemical reaction? Does it slow it down or speed it up? Speeds it up. You better remember that. Another thing that it does is it does something called lowering the activation energy. It lowers the activation energy that is needed to start a chemical reaction. And anytime you see enzymes, I always want you to think about things being broken down or digested. Right? So what breaks down a protein to an amino acid? An enzyme. What breaks down a polysaccharide to a monosaccharide? An enzyme. Right? The same enzyme. Matter of fact, it's kind of funny. The enzyme in your mouth is what breaks down starches. Enzymes in your stomach are what break down proteins. Big difference in these proteins. Now, when proteins combine in different three-dimensional shapes, they will form specific enzymes. You do need to know this. When proteins combine in different three-dimensional shapes, like what you see in the background, they will form specific enzymes. Here's the important part. You need to know that each enzyme will have its own unique shape. If I was to draw that, I'm going to make it simple for you. There's an enzyme, it's got that shape. There's an enzyme, it's got that shape. And then there's an enzyme, and it's got that shape. What is different about all three of those enzymes? Well, if you see it, you can say, well, this area is kind of what's different, isn't it? Right? And what determines the shape of that? Well, The shape of that is determined. The shape of the enzyme is determined by the sequence of what things that made it? Proteins. Just like the protein is determined by the sequence of amino acids, right? Well, anyway, when you get this different shape for these enzymes, these shapes will determine the function or the job of those enzymes, right? Matter of fact, you can even see it right here. This is enzyme point of emphasis on the EOC. Those different spots that you saw, which are right here, are called the enzyme's active site. And matter of fact, I'm even going to put that, that's the active sites. When you have different shapes, that means the active site will be different. And only certain things can come into that area, right, and attach. Those things have to match the actual shape of that enzyme. Now, that active site is where something called a substrate will bind to be broken down. And you do need to know that the enzyme attaches to the substrate, right? And substrates can be different things. It can be a protein, a carbohydrate. It can be whatever you eat that you're trying to break down, right? It can be whatever you want it to be. But anyway, when something attaches, you can see that it attaches. And do remember this too. This was actually on the EOC. There's an EOC question that says, what is something related to an enzyme and a substrate? And the answer is they form a complex with one another. That was the actual answer. And anytime you see an enzyme attached to a substrate, you call that an enzyme substrate complex. That's actually on the EOC, right? What it'll do is it'll digest this thing into two different things, then it releases them, and then this enzyme can go and be recycled. It can be reused, right? It doesn't just disappear. It can go on, find another substrate, and break that substrate down also. Now, enzymes, here's some other phrases that are used on the EOC. Since every enzyme has a different shaped active site, they say that enzymes have specificity. That means that specific enzymes can only break down specific substrates. And that is because it is all based on the shape of the enzyme, right? Is it got that circular, active site where only just say a polysaccharide could attach? Does it have that triangular shape where only maybe a protein could attach? Okay, these are all things you have to think about. The shape of the enzyme and how it's specific. Matter of fact, they'll use this comparison on the EOC. What's something else that has a unique shape and can only fit a certain thing? A key. Each of us has a different house key, don't we? Right? Isn't it nice that we all don't have the same house key? Wouldn't that be weird if, like, you came home and went inside your bedroom and went to lay down and go to sleep, and then there I was in the bed? Would that be weird? You know what I'm saying? So I mean, it's nice that we have unique shapes to things. Just like it's nice that we have unique enzymes that help us digest food and break things down, and it makes it easier on our body, right? So do remember that they call this like a lock and key. To me, I would say the lock would be the substrate because that's the thing that's broken down. The key, which is the thing that has the different shape, would be the enzyme for me, right? And that enzyme breaks down the substrate just like that key breaks down the lock, right? Now, I did tell you this earlier in the first part of it. I told you enzymes will lower the activation energy. What this chart shows you is the energy required to get some reactants to turn into products. And this line, this top line, is what the reaction would take, how much energy it would take. Just say, I don't know, 1,000 joules of energy. I don't know what type of value we would use here. But anyway, it requires a lot of energy just to get the products to turn into reactants. So say, for example, you ate a steak and you want to digest that steak and turn it into amino acids in your stomach that your body can actually use. Remember, steak is a protein. If you did not have stomach enzymes, God, would that be hard, man? What if you ate a steak and didn't have digestive enzymes and you just had to wait for it to deteriorate? That would take forever, wouldn't it? that your body would probably, can you imagine how much energy it would have to take? Like your stomach would literally just have to gnawed on it, and you would have to chew it and chew it and chew it. That would take a lot of energy, wouldn't it? All right. So I'm saying up here, that would take a lot of energy to turn that reactants into these products. But now that you've got stomach acids, which are basically enzymes, you notice that that line is a lot lower, and it actually reduces the activation energy. It makes it much easier. Now, maybe this is what I would own, let's say 500 joules. Makes it much easier for that reaction to actually occur. Okay, just FYI, this will be on the EOC. Right, be aware of that. Now, enzyme activity, this can be on the EOC too. I've heard this before. Enzyme activity, which means how well they work, can be affected by two things: temperature and pH. If it gets too hot, enzymes can become denatured. Make sure you remember that word. All that means is that it's so hot that it changes the active site shape. And if you change the active site shape, like you see this area right here got real hot, it jacks up the active site. Now can those substrates attach? No, they don't match the shape. So if that happens, that's what it means to be denatured. Now also, sometimes enzymes have to be in the right environment. Some enzymes work better in acidic environments. Where would you have a lot of acidic environments at? Where would that be? In your stomach. So certain enzymes might work better in your stomach, right? Other ones, like the saliva in your mouth, salivary amylase, this one would be in a neutral environment. Does anybody know what the pH of a neutral environment is? It's 7. Actually should be 7. All right. So be aware of all this stuff. This does happen. You can see here as the pH in this environment, this enzyme likes to work in an acidic environment because that low pH value means an acidic environment. But if it got moved into a more neutral environment, it would change the active site, and that would not be able to attach to the substrate because the active site does not match the shape of the substrate. Therefore, these enzymes wouldn't work. Hey, matter of fact, y'all know people who are lactose intolerant? They don't make the enzyme lactase. There's an enzyme called lactase, and what it does is it breaks down lactose, right? When you ingest it, when you eat it. So this person happens to not make the enzyme called lactase, therefore they can't break down lactose. That's why they're said to be lactose intolerant. Just FYI. So this is all about enzymes. Man, you got enzymes in your body that break down stuff y'all don't even know about. You'll learn all of this stuff coming up. All right, so you can see, listen, now I want y'all to watch this. Keep this in perspective. How long did I just talk about proteins, amino acids, and enzymes? A minute, didn't I? If it was something I felt like I could just blow over, guess what? I would. But I spent that time, didn't I? What should that tell you about its presence on future tests and the EOC? Now, you see the next 2 slides are nucleic acids. You see, I don't waste your time, did I? I didn't waste your time, did I? See, I spent that time on those proteins and enzymes and amino acids because you're going to see them. Right? So let's do these last 2 slides. Remember, I told you I would cover the rest of this stuff in chapter 11, right? So we'll make this brief. So your nucleic acids. We're back to building blocks again. The building block of a nucleic acid is something called a nucleotide. Yes, you do need to know that. Now, every time I draw a nucleotide, if I'm to just draw it quickly, to me, as a teacher, that's a 5-sided sugar, a phosphate group, and then a nitrogen base. That's how I draw it all the time, just like that. Now, could I find the 5-sided sugar in the actual picture that Google provided? Can any of y'all identify that 5-sided sugar? All right. Now compare mine. Can you find, there's my phosphate group, right? Can you find their phosphate group? It's close enough, ain't it? Right? Now, can you identify the nitrogen base? And mine's kind of simple, isn't it? Very simple. All right. Now, your examples, the only 2 types of nucleic acids you'll see in this class are DNA and RNA. You got deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid. Matter of fact, some of y'all may have heard of RNA recently. mRNA, right? Watch this. You ever heard of that before? Do y'all know what they're making? They're making a vaccine. Moderna is. Guess what their 4-letter exchange is on the stock exchange? mRNA. There's a type of RNA called mRNA, and they actually use mRNA technology to make their vaccines. That's crazy, ain't it? How many of y'all realize that it was named that way for a reason? Ain't that wild? Or y'all just think they just made up, well, what would be a good business name? Moderna, of course. Moderna. Do we even have modern? It's Moderna. No, guys, it don't work like that, man. All right, now DNA and RNA, if you don't know what they do, DNA are the carriers of your genetic information, and they form the basic genetic code, or literally the blueprint for everything that you are, right? It codes for the production of specific proteins, right? Do y'all know that hair is a different protein? Matter of fact, let's say, for example, me and Miss Locklear have different hair color proteins because our DNA is different. And our DNA codes for us to make different hair color protein. Now, does everybody have the same hair texture? No. So there's even a piece of your DNA that tells your hair to be a different type of texture, which is wild, right? It codes for the production of specific enzymes. Some people have lactase. Some people don't, right? Some people are able to break down certain things. Some people can't. Hey, another protein in your body, just FYI, is insulin. That's actually a protein. And if your DNA is jacked up, just say you have a genetic mutation for the section that codes for the protein insulin, and that section of your DNA is messed up, your body wouldn't make insulin. Guess what that means you would have? Diabetes. And it's all because of a genetic mutation. And now your pancreas cells won't make proteins, such as insulin. There's another protein called human growth hormone. Right? There's all types of stuff that's tied to genetic disorders that y'all probably don't even realize. And it also codes for your traits, right? Codes for your physical appearance. DNA is the reason why you look the way you look and why I am as beautiful as I am. Right? And obviously, we are very different.